We're starting the big liquidation phase in pretty much everything. Indicators are starting to roll over and start to show recession. I think there's more pain to come. This is what they do. They find the weakest hands and drive it into the strongest hands. I mean, that's just always the way of the world. Well, no, it's everything, right? We're starting the big liquidation phase in pretty much everything. It's just liquidation of everything. And it's interesting because it's spilling out into the macro world as well, obviously. It's like stuff like oil, which was like the last thing that was holding up the inflation narrative, is starting to get properly clocked. Everybody, in every position is about to lose money. Inflation, we've had this really complicated macro situation where we had supply chain shocks, which was people can get factories and ships sorted out because people were still in lockdown with COVID. There was a massive backlog of orders, and this filtered through, and that raised prices because everyone, if there's a shortage of goods, if you pay more, you get the goods, right? So that puts prices up. Then we start to see issues in the commodity sector that have underinvested. So everybody comes online again, everybody wants oil, gas, everything else. So commodity prices start exploding. Then we add on a Russia-Ukraine war and the penalties on Russia, and that takes a bunch of commodities out of the market. So now we're in this perfect storm of prices rising. But people are also scrambling, like all of us, probably you guys as well, to try and hire people. So we're all bidding up wages. But wages, outside of some jobs, aren't rising as much as prices. So what we've got is this situation where wages have gone up, let's say 4.5%, and prices have risen 8.5%. So everyone's taken a 4.5% or 4% haircut in their net worth. Now that hit crypto. It started as soon as inflation happened, because if you think of crypto as a groundswell movement, basically the dollar cost averaging by average people who are in the space started drying up, and we saw all the on-chain activity basically flatten out. And we've been in this sideways sloppy range because we've seen no network growth across the entire ecosystem. So economies were growing, but it now looks like all the forward-looking indicators are starting to roll over and start to show recession because you've basically given everybody a income haircut. So discretionary spending is going down the toilet. We're seeing it in things like restaurant spend. We've seen consumer credit going up. So people are desperately trying to borrow money to maintain their expenditure plans. So we've completely turned the economy from, oh, great, we're coming out of recession from the pandemic to, oh my God, we're going straight back into recession. The market's tightened before the Fed even got around to doing it. The market did its job and it stopped economic growth dead in its tracks. Europe's already in recession. China looks like it's in recession and is in lockdown again. To complicate the picture, we don't know what that means for supply chains. So we might have these, I think inflation falls, and I think the Fed pivot soon. It's like 2018. But 2018, the S&P was down 22%. It's only down about 15, 16 now. So I think there's more pain to come before the Fed suddenly realize that growth's gone. If inflation is still high-ish, because it's going to take a while to come down, but I think it comes down pretty fast. But let's say it's still at 5% and the economy is now headed directly into recession, what do the Fed do? Well, they're unlikely to purely stimulate because optically that doesn't look right. So my guess is they'll do what Europe's starting to do and Japan's starting to do, which is direct transfer payments that I've been talking about for a while, which is basically MMT. So i.e. you give money to the people who need it to cover the costs of their bills going up, and you basically finance it by buying bonds. So I think we're going to see stimulus coming, but markets like this is what they do. They find the weakest hands and drive it into the strongest hands. I mean, that's just always the way of the world.
So what are you up to right now? What are you doing? Are you sitting on your hands? Are you starting to deploy? What's going on?
I haven't done anything. I've not sold a single thing. Not done anything. I've started to average in on the really growthy tech stocks for the reasons we talked about, because into the carnage, if I'm right, and this is a super trend and a super cycle, then you want to be owning this stuff for the long run. Now, which companies are going to succeed or fail, we don't know. So you buy kind of baskets of stuff, much like you might do if you wanted to capture the movement in crypto. Crypto's the same, you've got to be, if you believe that network adoption continues, then this is when you should be buying. Right. But, it's just not everybody has endless amounts of cash to keep putting in. I don't look at my P&L. I'll have a peek at highs and I won't at lows because I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to sell it. And really all I want to do is, if I can generate some more cash and my wife stops buying stuff, I could then put it just more into crypto, because my belief is in the network adoption and the space overall. And this is one of the biggest fundamental change to both the financial economy and business models that we will ever live through or have ever lived through. And to not participate is stupid. Bear markets and recessions are scary. They don't feel good. You come in every day unless you're short. And I used to always trade these from the short side, so I loved these. But now I'm kind of looking at it from the other way around, and they don't feel as good. And I prefer the bull market. But this is how the world always plays out. Is there a structural change in the economy that means things don't recover? There is a non-zero, it is not a non-zero chance, i.e. there's a decent probability that we could structurally change how markets and the economy works. So that would be more scary, because then you don't get to get your money back. But generally speaking, I think that central banks and their magic bullet drives up asset prices over time. So if you remember that, just make sure you own some of those magic bullets when they come, and that is owning some of these assets. So it shouldn't be scary. If you've got any cash, then you can buy more at great prices. If you haven't, then you need to make a decision, is how secure is your income? That's the key to everything. Income is everything, assets are nothing. Is your income secure? If your income's secure, you just ride it out. If your income's not secure, then liquidate your assets and give yourself some cash. And in that situation, a friend of mine early on in my career gave me the great piece of advice, which was, he who has cash in a recession is king, because that's when you can buy everything on discount. That's when you can book any restaurant you want. You can buy anything you want. So that's the key. So just, if you can keep that in the back of your mind, yes, it feels scary, but maybe you can take advantage of it.